Welcome to Adventures in Grace. This is Jim Hockaday. My wife and I, Erin, we finally got home, and it's nice to be back in Castle Rock, Colorado. Get a chance to see the fall colors behind me. I know there's a little bit of a glare back there, but thanks for being with us on Adventures in Grace. Number one, we do these videos so that God can to you become more real. He has to become real in your life, where you're listening to his voice and you're sensing his presence. I realize at any moment, because we're so good at the flesh, we're so good at the world, that we can drown ourselves or cover ourselves up in the flesh and world. But we want to help you, even as I continue to grow myself, become better and better at acknowledging and recognizing and becoming aware of the presence of God. Number two, your faith was always meant to be in the presence of God. That's how answers to prayers come, when you actually believe something or get involved with what it is that you consider to be dear to your heart. And the more dear God is to your heart, the more real he is to your heart. You know, in the time of testing, you'll always go back to your default setting, just like a computer. Just means if you've always gone to the doctors, you'll always go to the doctors. If you've always gone to the emergency room, you'll go to the emergency room again. And this is just a pattern that'll just begin to work in your life on such a regular basis that if you don't do something to change that, it's probably not going to change. So this is the reasons why we do these videos. And number three, so that you get answers to your prayers and you have testimonies. Hey, I'm going to share some wonderful things. And this is a really good folks, Steve and Kathy Cochran in Tulsa, Oklahoma. In fact, we're hoping that maybe they'll even come out this way to Castle Rock, Colorado. And they've just got both wonderful careers in the medical field. Steve is a chiropractor, and he's the old school chiropractor that actually spends time with you, that actually listens, that his adjustments are way different than the normal way things go today. And of course, Kathy does all kinds of different administrative and nursing skills that she has. But I just want to share this with you. He sent me this just a little bit ago. Hey, Jim, a patient of mine from Florida called me a few weeks ago. Her mother, our age, hasn't eaten solid food for over 2 years because of jaw pain. My advice was to watch your YouTube videos, which would be Adventures in Grace. Today, I got this text, and this is the lady talking. I just wanted to send you a quick update on my mom. She has taken what you recommended to heart. She has been listening to Jim almost daily and putting what he says into practice. She's like a whole new person. I've never seen her have this mentality before. It's truly an answer to prayer. We went to lunch yesterday and she had a salad, Brussels sprouts, and some rice off my plate. I haven't seen her eat that much solid food without being in tremendous pain in over 2 years. She said she knows she's healed and any pain associated with it is temporary and can't stay because she knows she's healed and then it goes away. I'm so proud of her and grateful. It goes down to another text here. And grateful to you for leading us to him. She's even considering attending one of his gatherings to meet him, even if she has to fly out of state. I can't thank you enough. You're such a blessing to not only me, but my loved ones as well. God bless you. I feel like I'm starting to get my mom back. And of course, what a great testimony that is. And so if that mom or the daughter is watching, I'm just real thankful and extend my faith to you and the precious, wonderful anointing of God that even comes while you're watching this video, for you to just continue to excel and never have another pain in your jaw and have nothing but beautiful experiences as you eat food and as you digest and as your jaw works perfectly normal in every way. What a wonderful testimony of God's grace. So we're getting back into this video series that's kind of interesting. I just took this off of Romans 4:16. It says, the promise depends on faith so it can be experienced as a grace gift. Talking about Abraham, the promise depends on faith so that it can be experienced. Aren't you glad that the promises of God, or the things that Jesus has established in the new covenant, are for us to experience? And to not experience them, there would be something wrong. And so as we got into a little bit of Abraham, we saw that there were some tremendous things about him. Even in Hebrews 11:8 in the Passion Translation, faith motivated Abraham to obey God's call and leave the familiar to discover the territory he was destined to inherit from God. So he left with only a promise, and without even knowing ahead of time where he was going, Abraham stepped out in faith. Well, what did that promise give him? An experience that actually was the fulfillment of the promise. Aren't you glad today we don't just have promises? We have absolute facts, spiritual realities in the form of the finished work of Jesus Christ and all that he has done for every one of us believers to walk in the light, to walk in victory, to walk in health, to walk in discernment and wisdom, to walk in perception, and what's the word that I want to use? Discretion or discernment. I think I used that one already. But these are wonderful, wonderful things that God has given us through Jesus Christ that we wouldn't even have to believe for a promise to come. We're already, in a sense, you could say, the fulfillment of the promise. The new covenant and new testament, new creation, in him, sons of God, filled with God, able to do the works of God and enjoy the benefits of God, walking in a place of faith with answered prayers, where we're able to share our wonderful testimonies with those that are around us. I think you see, just in these few seconds here, how wonderful it is to experience the Lord. Well, let's get this invitation from the Lord put back into this video, and that's in Matthew 11:27-30. And this is the invitation that we always give, and it's in the Message Bible, and it says, "Now Jesus resumed talking, but now tenderly. The Father has given me all these things to do and say." This is a unique father and son operation coming out of father and son intimacies and knowledge. No one knows the Son as the Father does, nor the Father like the Son does. But I'm not keeping it to myself. I'm ready to go over it line by line with anyone willing to listen. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me, work with me, watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting upon you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn how to live freely and lightly. Well, how about that, learning how to live freely and lightly? I'm going to put my hand up and say, that's the kind of life that I'd rather have than to live in the strenuous, chaotic world of the flesh, where we struggle from pillar to post. In other words, by the time we climb the mountain in one problem that's solved, we go right back down to the valley in another problem that needs to be solved. Jesus is our answer, and he desires, man, I'm just sensing right now the presence of God healing people, especially in your throat and in your sinuses. Right now, the Lord heals you in your sinuses and in your throat. And there'll be a complete change in Jesus' name. And I certainly trust that those of you that are receiving this will share this testimony with us. You know, I know there's a lot of you that haven't shared your testimonies with us, but please do so that we can share them with others. All right, so here we go here, talking about Abraham again. And remember, we were over in Genesis 22, where the Lord tested Abraham by saying, Abraham, give me your son, your only son, sacrifice him on the altar. And the strangest thing that I still, it confounds me, and yet I understand it. You know, years ago, there was a friend of mine, Buzzy Sutherland, who went home to be with the Lord. And I went to see him, and I was all studying these in him realities, and we were making headway in prayer school. And I went out there, and I spent time with him for a weekend, and I came back, and everybody was like, okay, what did he share with you? And I said, you know, the things that he shared were the things that we share. I said, but there was a stark difference. And they said, well, what was it? I said, well, actually, he believes it, and we don't. When you see another level of believing, then it helps you to recognize how far you've gone backwards and how far you need to go forwards in your belief. When I see Abraham take his son and never say a word, never argue with God, never even utter any doubt and unbelief, and he wasn't like the premier word of faith guy that had heard that you're never supposed to say anything negative. I'm not mocking that. I'm just saying this guy actually was an example of what's been taught for so many years in the word of faith, where we're still trying to, if you will, mimic the word of faith doctrine and make sure that everything's so perfectly said, where when you believe it like this, it's just pretty normal to say the right thing. You don't have to try because you're already over into the understanding that it's done and that it's finished. So when I see Abraham take his son up on that mountain, Genesis 22, and I see that the angel of the Lord had to shout at him the second time his name, Abraham, Abraham. I saw a little bit of that just this weekend with a father talking to his boy. And the first time he shouted at him, it was very mild. The second time was very strong, and that boy stopped right there. See, that's exactly what God had to do with Abraham, because he was really going to take the knife and follow through, because he had figured something. What did he figure out? Hebrews 11, 17 to 19 in the Amplified. Listen to what this says. By faith, Abraham, when he was put to the test, while the testing of his faith was still in progress, he had already brought Isaac for an offering. He who had gladly received and welcomed God's promises was ready to sacrifice his only son, of whom it was said, through Isaac shall your descendants be reckoned. For he reasoned that God was able to raise him up even from among the dead, indeed in the sense that Isaac was figuratively, boy, I really butchered that word, figuratively, dead, potentially sacrificed. He did actually receive him back from the dead. All right, well, when I look at the word figuratively, hey, I said that really well. The word figure is in there. He did his math. On the way to that mountain, he began to calculate. God, through promise and through covenant, established with me that he would provide for me, and he would change my body and Sarah's, and would provide for us a child that would be the heir to a multitude of nations. If my covenant partner now asks me to take this son and sacrifice him on the altar, then I will do so. But in doing so, he will have to raise him back up out of the ashes, because he is the promised son, and through him the nations shall be birthed. So he did his math. He calculated and he did his math, and he came up with, if I'll do my part, God will have to do his part. So I'll not step back from my responsibility as a covenant partner, which will then assure me that God will not step back from his part as my covenant partner. This is really so crazy good. I want you to turn in your Bibles, if you go there, I'm going to go right here now, to Hebrews in chapter 6. And I'm going to look here in verse 13. Now, I'm reading this out of the Message Bible. Let's see how this reads. When God made his promise to Abraham, he backed it up all the way, putting his own reputation on the line. That's really good. What do you mean? Well, what God did in this covenant is God cut the covenant with himself. So in other words, for God to break the covenant that he spoke to Abraham would mean that God would have to be dissolved himself. In other words, God the Father and God the Son cut the covenant, just like what happened when Jesus hung on the cross. But this is, 3,000 years earlier, 4,000 years earlier? They cut the covenant on behalf of Abraham. And what they said to him had to be done between God the Father and God the Son, Jesus, on behalf of Abraham. In other words, they're in covenant with Abraham only in so much that Abraham was the beneficiary of the covenant that they cut with themselves. Now, what I just shared with you is really powerful. They are in covenant with themselves. Abraham is the beneficiary. If he believes in what they did in covenant with themselves, he as the beneficiary by faith becomes what? A recipient of everything spoken. So is his part necessary? Yes, his part's necessary. But the covenant was established with God the Father and God the Son. So for their side to not fulfill what they said to Abraham when he is fulfilling his side is for God the Father and Jesus to be dissolved, to be made nothing. You could almost say for God and Jesus to actually just disintegrate and go away, which then, of course, the whole world would implode. So do you see the importance of this? It said here, God made his promise to Abraham. He backed it up all the way, putting his own reputation on the line. One thing God's not going to do is he is not going to go back on his word, because his word is backed up by the relationship and the covenant that was cut with the Father and the Son. When you understand this properly, then you'll understand that no matter what God says, if you follow through, you have him backing you up 100%. Come on, we're into some things here that are really, really good. And I don't want to take too much more time because time seems to just go away so fast. But listen here, I remember back in the day of prayer and healing school, and I remember one day there was a meeting getting ready to go out into healing school. No, I wasn't feeling sorry for myself, but you have to understand, there's moments where you feel your flesh, you feel your insecurity, you feel your inability to do what God's asking you to do. And now, he's not asking us to do it in our own ability, but when you feel your flesh. I had my hand on the door and I said, God, what am I going to do today that I haven't already done? What am I going to share that I haven't already shared? God, I feel like I just can't do this. And I heard his voice say, Jimmy, whatever you do, I'll back you up. And I got down on the floor and I looked underneath the desk. It was a smaller room. And I said, Lord, I know that's you. What did you say? He said, whatever you do, I'll back you up. And then I had my hand on the door again, getting ready to go. And I said, Lord, did you say whatever I would do? And he says, I know your heart, that your heart is for me and the things that I have actually asked you to do. So whatever you do, I'll back you up. And folks, I put that to the test and I saw God come through perfectly. In fact, what the test was, I stepped out to say, God's going to do 2 miracles, and he did. And after he did it, all I could think of was, God, what if I fell short? Remember the arrows hit them on the ground? And then so shall your adversaries go away. And the prophet to the king, when he only hit it a couple of times, says, what are you doing? Why didn't you just hit it continually? And then generation after generation would have been free. So much of the time we'll limit God. And I thought to myself, what if I should have said, there's 3 miracles here today, or there's 5 miracles here today? What if I came up short and as a result, someone didn't get their miracle? See, it began to change how I began to think. And what we're going to get into is going to do that for you. Go to jhmi@jimhockaday.com. That's our email. And send us your grace stories. You can find that email on our website, jimhockaday.com. We're excited about the kind of testimonies we heard at the beginning of this broadcast. Come with us, get with us on this little journey here about, let me see if I can remember the name. The Experience of the Promise. I think that's the name. I'll have to get with Chloe and see what I told her ahead of time. But stay with us. It's just going to get better. We'll see you next time.